concrete in. You know, those big trucks that have concrete in them that turn like this, they have that big thing on the back and they turn. They didn't have anything like that. So what they did here to build the foundation, to put this big building, just this sanctuary part, but this big building on, is they collected rock from around here. And there's always lots of rock, let me tell you. And they worked really hard to put it together and make it good and secure so we could build this huge building on top of it. Can you imagine? This is a lot of building, isn't it? And I think of how big this is, plus we have a steeple too, right? And there's a big heavy bell in that steeple too. And it's all resting on these rocks. And we have a story that Jesus told people. He said, you know, a wise person, when they were going to go build a house, and a wise person went and found rock and put it all together, and that's what they built their house on. But do you know what the foolish person used? Sand. What happens to sand? You guys go to the beach, right? What happens when a wave comes in? It pulls it back out, doesn't it? Have you built the sand castles and stuff like that? And then the wave comes along and smashes the whole thing down, right? It wears it away. That's what Jesus said, because when the storms come, the one on the rock, because the rock is solid, right? It can stand. But the one on the sand, over it goes, right? And that's what Jesus said to us, is so you got to think about what's your foundation, and not just the rocks, but what's the thing that you want to do in your life to make it good? Like, is love a good foundation to have things on? Nope, this is wood. That's wood. No, not the entire building. No, just the basement is rock. Just the foundation is rock. The rest of this is wood and plaster, and there's some glass in here, and there's metal and things like that. Yep. But when I talk about the foundation of my life, I say it's love and God's love, because that's the thing that keeps me solid, right? And when hard things come, and it feels like a storm sometimes. Does it feel like that to you when something's hard? Like it's almost like a big storm that's coming in on you? Is that I can stay steady because I can say, you know what, God loves me, and I know other people love me, and I can love them. So that's what Jesus meant when he said, build on a good foundation, something like love. All right? Let's pray. Gracious God, we want things to be sturdy and to stay, even when it's hard. And we know that your love is one of those things that helps us stay sturdy. Let us be love too, your love in this world. All this we ask in your name. Amen. All right, you can go. And one of these days we will take you downstairs. There's spiders, so just to warn you. Matthew. It's the story that I just told the kids. Listen for God's words to us today. If anyone who hears my words and puts them into practice is like the sage, the wise person, who built a house on a rock. When the rainy season set in, the torrents came and the winds blew and buffeted the house. It didn't collapse because it had been set solidly on rock. Anyone who hears my word but does not put them into practice is like the fool who built a house on sandy ground. The rains fell, the torrents came, the winds blew and lashed against the house, and it collapsed and was completely ruined. May God bless these words to our living. I called Eric yesterday. Texted him early in the morning and said, Eric, can you come to church? If you're here at church this morning, can I ask you some questions? Because Eric is our resident expert on stone walls.
Right.
All right, so we have the curved one out there is because of Eric, and you were working on one of our back ones the other day, right? Or no, this one's still up here, in other places.
Bob Dorr and I were working on that one.
We're working on that one, yep, because stone walls are good, but they don't last forever. They need a little TLC, right? So first question, I told you I had 2 questions, and then I came up with 4. So how did you learn to build stone walls?
Oh, boy.
You got to get closer.
Linda Fates,
Yep.
the Tree Farm, they had a delivery of stone that was brought to the property. And the man that was going to build it was from Waterboro. And he never showed, and he never showed. And Linda's dad, who had this great dream of how he was going to create that garden that we all attend in the summertime. Well, he decided one day, will you ride with me to Waterboro? I've got to find out why this man is not showing up. And we got down there, and a neighbor said, oh, that old guy died.
Oh, dear.
So Stubby Treewergy, he said, are you up for this? And I said, up for what? And he said, would you help me build this wall? And it was a failure, I'll tell you. We had no idea what we were doing. And so that's how I first got started.
But you didn't let the failure stop you, I take
No,
it. Right?
no.
Did you have to go back and rebuild that wall?
Oh, yes. The rocks were rounded stones,
Yeah.
and they came from Parsonsfield.
Oh, okay. So they brought them in. Yep. What is the best part about working with stone and building these stone walls?
I think looking back after you've finished
Okay.
and see an appreciation of something you created was, I think, the most important.
Has been a part of that. What's the hardest part?
New knees, a fused ankle. Somebody told me one time that you had to have a strong back and a weak mind, and I have both.
I love it. And how do you figure out? Do you just look at your rock pile and look at what's coming, and you can kind of see what kind of rock you need next? But how do you pick your next rock?
I lay a whole base course first,
Okay.
but the foundation under the base course is the most important.
And what's that?
I mean, we
also-
live in New England, and you have frost,
Yeah.
you have tree roots that grow,
Yep.
and you have woodchucks. And those
Where's
are
Allie?
the things that we fight.
Yep.
So a trench should be dug, probably for the base, filled with crushed, compacted stone,
Okay.
crushed rock.
Yep.
And then the first course is laid on top of that.
Okay. Yep. What's your favorite project you've ever done?
Oh, man. There are hundreds.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't
Does
count.
one even come to mind?
I think, if across from, one of the first ones that I did was across from the, what do you call it, the Christmas tree shop. And
Oh.
it went into a Unum development,
Oh, yeah. Yep.
and that wall is still there.
You guys
I
know where
always-
that is? Yeah, but there's a pet store there too and everything.
I
Yeah.
always liked the one going up to Sable Oaks. It was
Oh, yeah.
serpentine,
Yep.
had turrets on the end.
Oh my God.
They're still standing.
You did that one too?
Yeah.
Yeah. No wonder you needed
No, I
new
didn't do
knees.
it alone.
Yeah, but still, you led that one, yeah.
You have a good crew. So
Yeah, that's right. Well, thank you, Eric. That gives us some visuals, and thank you so much for... I always figured it was better to let Eric talk about what he knows how to do than me try to describe it. So last week we talked about why faith. Why do we bother with faith, and what do we do with that? And now we're going to, as we talk about faith, we got kind of the why, now the how. And you start with at the very bottom, right? When you're building a building, you don't put the roof on first, right? You need a foundation. And I didn't sing the song with the kids. We worked on the story, but there's a song that I learned probably when I was in 5th or 6th grade. Don't build your house on a sandy land. Don't build it too near the shore. It might be kind of nice, but you'll have to build it twice, or you'll have to build that house once more. And then I'm going to build my house on a rock with a firm foundation on a solid spot. While the storms may come and go, but the peace of God you will know. And that song, and How Firm a Foundation, I have been singing all week. So, because I've been reading about foundations. And I've been reading particularly about rubble foundations, because that is what we sit on right now, what they call a rubble foundation. And there's word issues this week. Rubble doesn't sound good, does it? Right? It sounds like the remnants after destruction. But that is the term for the foundation, the found rock and gathering of rock and put together rock that we sit on right now. And trust me, I have been downstairs because the furnaces are underground here. I have seen our foundation, and it is rubble. Does anybody else have a rubble foundation? Who's got an old house? You do? You do? Yeah, you're in one? Oh, you've got one. Oh, yours is rubble too. Yeah, that makes sense. You've got an old one, right? I've had churches. I've had parsonages. I've had a lot of rubble in my career. It seems. And think about how much weight is on that foundation, right? The load-bearing walls are exteriors, right? That foundation is bearing all this weight. And as I said to the kids, a steeple with a rather heavy bell in it too, right? That's a lot of downward pressure. I know they try to mitigate the pressure, but that's a lot on these foundations. That all those stones that were fit together in 1797 and 90, well, probably 97, first thing they did, right, is still there. Because concrete, how many of us have concrete foundations, right? Isn't that what we've all got now, right? That didn't exist in its current form, so to speak, until 1824 when someone invented Portland cement. And it was not named after us. It was in England. It was that Portland, not our Portland. And then the first house that was built with it was in 1849, and it was reinforced concrete too. That's what we have now. You see when foundations are poured, they have rebar in them, right? That helps with you want it to move. You want any kind of pressure or shocks that come to be distributed. You don't want them to stay right in there, and that rebar helps do that. But we're living in 1798 reality. Now, honestly, the Romans did use some form of cement. In 300 BC is when they started. Can you imagine? But there weren't enough Romans around when we went to build this building, it appears, when our ancestor did. And this is what happens when people feel that they possess land, right? As our ancestors for here did. They felt they had the right to possess this land, and they decided to build on it. So they did. Rocks were here. They gathered the rocks, and hence the rubble. That's the name. The other part of this is a limestone wash that we call whitewash. You didn't just do the stone wall, you whitewash it too, which is a part that we've forgotten. Whitewash is not mortar. You know what mortar is, right? It goes between bricks, and things like that. And it's very sturdy, and it doesn't have a lot of give to it. Whitewash is made of lime, and it does have give. The other thing that it has is it breathes. And I know that we have been taught that we don't want our foundation to breathe, right? We want it impervious, right? We spend a lot of money on that, right? That is the exact opposite of what foundations need to be, though. They need to let moisture go in and out, especially out, because we create a lot of it. The other thing is about using a rubble foundation, much like Eric's stone walls that he's created and the round one out here, is when you use cement, you make these forms, and concrete, actually. I would get my dad's not on anymore, because then he won't yell at me. Cement is not concrete. It's a part of concrete. It's an element of concrete. But so when you say, oh, that's made out of cement, anybody in the concrete business does one of these, right? And I grew up with, in our church, we had people in the concrete business, let me tell you. The Dutch mafia owned part of that. But it's the concrete, you have to build a form, right? And so often what we do are squares and rectangles, right? Well, you don't have to do squares and rectangles with stone. It gets a little tricky once you start building up on it. Building curves is hard, particularly because the rest of our materials don't bend very well. I mean, as we've got, bends and curves here, but that involves piecing or steaming them and bending. But that's the thing that rubble gives you. You can do a little bit more with it, and it also has that breathability because there's spaces in between, right? Now, you don't want big old holes, in it, but that's why they then whitewash it to kind of keep it together, but also allow for that in and out. Nobody ever expected their foundation to be impervious. The thing you have to do, golly, can you tell that I read some historical websites this week, right? You have to inspect your foundation regularly. You have to go down and look at it, and you have to touch it. See who's turning into sediment, because that's what happens when rocks, are exposed to air and water and all that kind of stuff. They start turning sandy, right? They turn into it. That's what we expect to do. Who's doing it? Who's doing it too much? Too much means what's really coming in here? Who might needs to be replaced? I remember I've had a couple of these parsonages and churches, and you go downstairs every once in a while, and you're like, there is a rock on the ground, right? And it has popped out somewhere. Well, that tells you something. Like the buildings may be shifted, there's not weight pressing down there or a little too much. And sometimes we picked it up and tried to wedge it, see, can we turn it and wedge it back in? Sometimes it was time to find a new one because that shape had changed enough, we hadn't seen it. The other thing that was out of Boston, this one website that I was reading that does historical buildings, is one thing we have forgotten to do is whitewash. And there's a word, poor whitewash. Talk about rubble and whitewash. You can't think of two worse words, right? So what do you think of when you hear the word whitewash? Pardon me? Covering up something. You don't want something to see. Someone to see. What did you say? Snow. It's like, what else? I heard you. Oh, yes, that's a long word that I'm not going to try to say, right? But it's a conceal, but you're trying to hide it behind something, right? Anybody else? Amy, I'm always looking for you for a good definition of a word. Obfuscate. There you go. She can say it, right? I looked it up, of course. Conceal unpleasant facts, right? When you want to conceal something. When you want to whiten something. This one I thought was interesting. I hadn't thought about this one. Exonerate someone, okay? Get them off the hook for something by doing a perfunctory investigation. Not really digging too deep, right? And often using biased data. Gee, sounds familiar, huh? Right? And the other ones are to alter or to cater to white people, right? Or in theater, to use a white actor in a role that's meant for a person of color. We see that over the years. They're getting better about that, but they've done that a lot, right? We hear greenwashing now. Have you heard that term? Companies greenwash themselves. They put out words to say that they're so environmental, but they're really not. Or they spend some money on something to say that they're environmental, but they're really just greenwashing themselves. Well, that is totally not what whitewash is. I mean, that's what we've made it into, but it's not. It is critical to a foundation. It holds those rocks together. It allows it to breathe. None of that sounds like breathing, does it? It all sounds like, again, what we often do with our basements, put up some kind of a barrier, right? A moisture barrier so nothing comes in, right? Did you guys know there's something called sick house syndrome? And you know why that happens? Because your house isn't breathing. You have locked it up so tightly with everything. Some of us have vents, right, in our houses to vent things out. Do you understand how much moisture we make as human beings every day? Like just breathing and all of that creates that. Then we take showers in a wooden box called a house, right? We cook. Again, think about how much steam comes off what we do. We create so much moisture. In the tiny house movement, that's like the biggest problem, is how do you get the moisture out of that tiny space, right? But that's what the whitewash does. It allows it to escape. And you know, it gets dirty as it's allowing that to do it. Whitewash, you know, gets grimy looking because it's doing its job. Right? We wouldn't say to our furnace filter, "Why are you dirty?" That means you're not working or the furnace isn't working. No, the filter's doing its job. You know that there's air going through your furnace, right? And air is going to pick up dust. It's got a bunch of stuff in it, but it filters it out. That's also what whitewash does. So why all this lesson on rubble and whitewashing, right? Is because when we think of foundations, I think we tend to think of things that are impervious, right? Solid, right? But really, foundations are things that you're on that do give you a good base, but foundations cannot be made once and then forgotten. That's what we forget to do when we forget to whitewash it. We like to go down with a can of that spray foam and fill all the holes. We're actually doing a disservice to our foundation. Wait till I tell John Miliano, the trustees, right? We want everything to mortar together, to be neat and orderly, like we'd like cement blocks. We'd like poured concrete with reinforced steel in it, right? What? Very Roman, right? We want that. But guess what the most polluting construction material is? Concrete, you're right. The temperature that it requires to make it is like 900 plus degrees or something like that, right? Makes the most greenhouse gas of any construction material and one of the highest things in the world. And it's interesting when I was reading about that, because we like to use it outdoors too. You know, to dam things or for diversion. We think we're keeping things safe from mud flows or things like that. You know what actually is the best thing for that? Whatever are the native plants. They know how to hold the soil in place much better. Because my favorite thing is, you know, when you see these concrete walls and things people try to put, and then the water goes right around them and undercuts them, and they start sinking to one side. But trees are a lot harder to undercut. They know how to get their roots together, and plants and things like that. And I also think about concrete and cities, because I lived in New York. August in New York is the worst. Right? You've got the sun coming this way, and the heat off the buildings coming this way, and off the sidewalks coming this way, because you are just surrounded by concrete. Is that really what we want? What's really an inferior product that doesn't do what we need it to do? We think it does, but it's creating greenhouse gas like nothing else does, and it still doesn't always work. Last week we talked about our values, what are important to us, our morals, which is right conduct, and our beliefs, what we think is truth, right? And those things are really our foundation, isn't it? It's funny, when you look up the foundation of faith, that's what I did this week too, and I looked up, and I knew it was going to lead me to systematic theology, right? But the foundations of faith are history, our theology, what we say about God and all that, and then practice. I was glad they got to practice. That was nice. History, You know, we understand history, right? We might not know all the history, but we understand that. When it gets to theology, oh my, you guys, this just goes sideways. You should see the list of everything we're supposed to think about, right, in the theology. You know, of course, God, Jesus for us, the Bible, sin, salvation. Oh, you should see this list. It just went on. And I thought, oh no wonder nobody bothers with this. But I prefer to think of theology, this ground for us of faith, is what draws us together and holds us together, right? I love that verse from Acts. We didn't get to it as we did Acts this summer, that describes us, or God really, as that in which we live and move and have our being. That to me is theology. If it doesn't help me live and move and have my being, it's not very helpful, is it? I like that, looking against that. So what shapes our living and moving and being? If we think we want it to be molded and poured into just certain shapes and a lot of 90-degree angles, even with some rebar stuck through it, right? Guess what's going to happen? Cracks come. Right? Ground moves. How many of you in your house goes, oh yeah, there was a shift, right? We build houses and they live and breathe and they shift on us, right? I'm even built on ledge rock. You know, I know my yard is, they told me that. And I just think, oh my goodness, you know, how can you build like a square house that's supposed to be flat? Well, I'm even built into the hill, but on rock, where there's water coming into that. It's underground all the time. That rock is changing. Some of it is turning sand on me, right? Slow erosion. Not to mention sudden shocks. We don't have too many earthquakes here. But we had one not that long ago, right? A few years ago? I remember that. We also had... Was it one this summer too? I think I missed that one. I was on another floor and didn't feel it. We weren't on first floor, that's right. We also had dynamite to put the buildings over here, and that we felt, let me tell you. But the question is, how do we go about building a foundation that is going to respond to everything that happens around us? A lot of times we are taught that we're supposed to have a solid foundation that's going to be unmoving. No. You ever read about foundations and earthquakes? I read about that too. Now they're doing rubber and bearings to earthquake-proof houses. So you have a foundation, and then they have rubber with bearings here, and then you build the house on top of it. So when the shaking starts, the foundation does not move that shaking into the house. The rubber and those bearings allow movement to happen, and you'd think, I don't want a house to move. Yes, you do. Right? You want it to kind of move independently, and it will help disperse that energy too. I think about that for us. What kind of foundation can we build? Right? And what do we need to use with it? So when shaking comes, right, we don't destroy everything else around us, right? We don't want that. But it also, like, what do we need? What can we use? What can live and breathe and give us life so that we can do it? Often we're given our foundation and values, aren't we? Whether we know it or not, you know, we were raised in a family and that had ideas and everything, but you can't just take what you've been given, right? How many of you know that there's things that you were raised with that you do not